Am I the a-hole for not splitting an inheritance? I'm 29 female. I'm one of 5 children. Siblings are 32, 25, 24 and 21. When I was 9 my father got into a bad accident, which left him wheelchair-bound and needing around-the-clock care at first. Months later my mother packed up and left my father for another man. Fortunately my grandparents were able to step Banda took over my father's care, while caring for my siblings and me. I was 11 when they divorced. My mother came back for my siblings to die, but I refused to leave. It's not like she fell off the face of the earth. She would call, visit, and was still there if we needed something. I on the other hand rescinded. My mother life got hard for her and she ran like a coward. Anyhow my siblings went to live with her. I did not often. I would visit, but my resentment became too much, especially when she became pregnant with the other man's child. They got married and moved away, basically ceasing contact. I heard from her on some holidays and birthdays, but that's about it. I was 16 when I learned she'd asked my father to relinquish his rights so that her husband could adopt my siblings. Honestly, I think it broke my father's heart because my siblings did turn their backs on him. He tried to initiate going to visit them and calling, but they really didn't want anything to do with him. He was adamant he wasn't, but I guess he talked to my siblings and they stated this is what they wanted, so he did. My grandparents are now deceased. I've been my father's full-time caregiver for the last 7 years. After years of continuous fighting for justice, my father finally received it in a huge settlement, but at the beginning of this year his health took a turn for the worse and within months he was gone. I've been estranged from a mother and sibling since I was a teenager, but once she heard of my father's passing she reached out. I honestly didn't think too much of it because I thought she was reaching out to give her condolences. Like everyone else, not the case. She wanted to know why I hadn't reached out to her and my siblings, that they were going to need their part of their inheritance soon. I honestly didn't know how to respond, but be brutally honest, I told her the moment he relinquished his rights they no longer were his children. For her request I asked was she drunk. She said no. Then I responded she had to be stupid calling me thinking they were entitled to anything. Of course she's got another family involved, stating that I'm in the wrong and that my father was aware that my siblings still considered him their father. BS. Now for the top comments, not the home. She made all this possible. Hope your siblings are happy with her now. Good for you for caring for your father. I hope you enjoy your inheritance. You earned it. Did he leave a will? You'd better get a lawyer. I bet she won't go quietly. He left the way, leaving everything to me. Once I became his full-time caregiver, I was added to everything. I have the documents of his relinquished rights and all. I'm sure they will try to contest, and it's likely, highly doubt they will succeed, though. Asking the father to relinquish his rights to her current husband can legally adopt them is going to be a hard explanation for her to make in court. Generally, adoption voids any rights to inheritance from the original parents. Adoption is generally a complete severance of any ties to the previous parents. I'm adopted, and this is the case in the U.S. If I tried to contest my mother's will, the only way I would see the inside of a courtroom is if the judge wanted to hop over the bench and slap me for wasting their time, not stay home. It's not your job to cater to your family's needs when they never had a decency to care about yours. They're not even her family, not the Hall. He was their father, thought to be their father, and the children said they didn't want to. Why do they suddenly change their mind? You cared for your father on your own, sacrificed years of your life to care for him and help him get justice. They don't deserve anything. Although I'd reached out to a lawyer and examine your father's will to see what your responsibilities are regarding his inheritance in case. Next story. Am I a Hall for refusing to pay my mother-in-law back with interest? Back about 3 months ago I lost my job as a registered nurse following a gym accident that left me partially paralyzed in my left leg. I had to go through physical therapy, but it wasn't super severe by any means, and I regained most mobility last month. I'm still in PT, however, because there are simply certain things I cannot do, like bend the leg without me guiding it with my hands, so it looks like I'm walking with a peg leg. Basically, during this time my mother-in-law sends my husband like $600. We did not ask for the money, but you knew we were pretty hard up at a time because my insurance does not cover all of physical therapy and it was rather expensive, so our savings was going away at an alarming rate. Also during this time my mother-in-law made me feel like absolute crap because she kept making comments about how broke she was and kept saying, well, if I hadn't helped you guys out, stuff like that. I often reminded her that we did not ask for the help. She tried sending us more money shortly thereafter, and I refused to accept it because I wasn't about to have that crap dangling over my head, just like my own scum family had done. For years I hated the whole "you wouldn't have that if it weren't for me" BS. It's the reason I refuse most help thankfully I was able to start a new job from home about a month back, and we were able to start coming up with money to pay mother-in-law back. Well, my husband goes to his mother's yesterday to give her a portion of the money we owed, and when he returned he starts talking about wanting to give his mom like 400 extra. I asked why, and he mumbled some excuse of, well, she didn't have to help us. I told him I wasn't about to do that because 400 is literally like 34 hours of work, close to an entire paycheck of mine. Well, to sum it up, he later admitted that his mother had said that she deserves interest on the loan since it took us so long to pay it back, and she almost went broke trying to help us. Generally she is not a money-hungry person or even this ignorant, if I'm being honest, but I'm still not willing to do it. I said absolutely not, and if he plans to start paying her back interest, especially where he has been doing other things for her on top of this, like redoing her porch, painting her house, burning brush, mowing her 6-acre lot, etc., then I would be rethinking my options and potentially pulling my money from the shared account, because I'm not going to be funding his mother extra money on a loan we didn't ask for. It is now going to be cutting into my paycheck/bill money. He keeps arguing she didn't have to help, so I snapped and said I didn't ask for help, and I said no, I was calm prior to this. Now he says I'm in a hole for losing my cool over money, and that I'm acting selfish because, again, she didn't have to help Mr. Ho. 400 in interest on a loan of 600 for 3 months, that's over 260%. April, she's a loan shark. I hope your husband's not in charge of the family finances. Nasty home info. Are you 100 certain he didn't accept extra money from her behind your back, because that's more interest than a pawn shop or a cash advance would have the gall to charge, and it sounds to me like it's trying to cover paying her back in full without admitting to you what in full actually is. Pay attention to this concern. My alarm bells are going off. Not be a hold, but are you sure that your husband didn't go to his mother to ask her for the money? That would explain her calling it a loan. No, he didn't. I made sure of that. I brought it up in front of both of them, because I wasn't sure in the beginning. But no, even she said that she just knew we were hard up and wanted to help. Did your husband borrow money that you are unaware of? Perhaps not the home. She didn't loan you the money she and ask send it to you. It therefore was a gift. You have no obligation to pay it back. No contract, even implicit to pay back, was entered into from your side. Paying her back is therefore already a nice deed. Paying her interest would be massively over the top, but that to me doesn't even seem to be the deepest issue. Why doesn't he stand up for you? Why didn't he stand up and not accept the money in the first place, as you discussed back then? Why does he bend over backwards for his mother but does no way seem to have your back in this regard? You need to have a serious talk with him. Next story is titled, Am I a haul for ransacking my stepdaughter's room after she hid my daughter's childhood doll? Again, for context, I, female 39, have a daughter, female 16. Her dad passed away when she was 6. I married my husband, male 42, 3 years ago, and I have a stepdaughter, female 17. My stepdaughter has a habit of constantly mocking my daughter for having her toyed all around. She calls my daughter weird for it. What my stepdaughter does not understand is that this doll carries sentimental value due to its attachment to my daughter and her dad. I told my stepdaughter to stop the mocking. Arasha says teasing had it stopped. My daughter then started complaining about my stepdaughter constantly hiding the doll as prank to scare her. She'd come into my daughter's room and take the doll and hide it for hours, forcing us to look all over the house. I've grown sick of, especially after she ignored all the warnings and seeing how emotionally draining it has been for my daughter. Final straw was days ago. I came home after my daughter called me, crying, saying she couldn't find her doll. I knew my stepdaughter took it. I called her and she hung up on me. I called my husband and his response was to tell me to wait till my stepdaughter gets bored and gives it back. I lost it. I got into my stepdaughter's room while she was out and ransacked it completely, just turned it upside down and searched harshly till I was able to find a doll. I didn't clean up the mess afterwards. I just walked out of the room. My stepdaughter got home, saw what I've done, and panicked, seeing she's obsessed with having her room organized, and seeing it in that state sent her into full panic mode. She called her dad after yelling at me, and her dad came home raging, saying I acted abhorrently and shamelessly by messing his daughter's room up. I argued that she had something that belonged to my daughter and was already warned about taking it. He said that his daughter was just messing with my daughter and that I should have waited till she gave the doll back like she always does, but instead made a situation worse. That escalated things. Both he and my stepdaughter are cold shouldering me and my daughter, not sure if I handled this the right way. Amari Ho. Now for the top comments. Not they hung. Your husband is the problem more than your stepdaughter. What sort of adult behaves like that and encourages their daughter to bully someone else with no repercussions, completely unacceptable. Yep, if the parent doesn't discipline a child, then it's only going to get worse. OP needs to leave the situation before it escalates. What happens when the stepdaughter destroys the dome? Not the whole 100. Your stepdaughter is not teasing, she is emotionally tormenting and torturing your daughter intentionally. She thinks your daughter is immature for being attached to a doll. She is acting like a bratty 6-year-old at 17. She should have some interest outside of torturing your daughter. What a nasty kid. Your husband needs a reality check. Exactly, it's not mocking or teasing, and obviously she didn't stop, as OP claims in the post. It's not a prank. I hope he's using minimizing language. Let's call it what it is. It's emotional abuse. OP says stepdaughter doesn't understand that the doll has sentimental value. That's BS. Stepdaughter is 17. She understands, and that's why she is taking it, because she knows it's important to OP's daughter. So that's how she can emotionally torture OB's daughter the best. If stepdaughter can understand that her room being organized is important to herself, she can more than understand the doll's importance. But she enjoys hurting her stepsister, and her father enables her not to be a home. But you will quickly become in a hall if you stay with this dude who doesn't give a damn about you or your child. Tell him what you did was a harmless prank and they should get over it, then dump him. Now for the last story. MIA Hall for refusing to change my wedding day to accommodate my fiancé son. My fiancé Brian, 43 male, and I, 41 female, are planning to get married next year. The wedding will be pretty low-key, so we have set a date but not booked a venue or sent out invites yet. The reason I chose this specific date is because it would have been my mom's 75th birthday if she hadn't passed 2 years ago, and I'm devastated she won't see me get married. For context, Brian and I have 2 daughters together, and he also has a son, Peter, chapter 22 male, from a previous relationship. Brian and Peter's mom did not have a healthy relationship. They separated when Peter was 13. He stayed with his mom and did not have any contact with Brian. However, with the wedding coming up, Brian wanted to reconnect with Peter, so we reached out to him online a year and a half ago. Peter replied, and the two of them met up a few times, but they're not close at all. Peter is a student, and because he has mental illness, he claims to be unable to hold down a job while studying. When Brian heard this, he offered to give him money, also in part because he feels guilty for not being present during Peter's teenage years. Apparently he did not have a good time living with his mother. Now my fiancé is giving Peter chapter £300 a month, which could have gone towards our own daughters. I strongly suspect Peter is only maintaining a relationship with Brian for the money. As always, Brian who has to message first and initiate meetups. Yesterday Brian asked me to move to wedding because Peter is not available on the dates we've picked. I got upset, saying that this date means a lot to me, and if the wedding meant anything to Peter, then surely he could have moved whatever other commitment he has that day. Braun accused me of not caring about him and his family, which is obviously not true. I saw the things I wrote in my post about Peter just wanting money and not giving 2 hoots about Brian, which made Brian even more upset, and he ended up telling me to get out of the house, so I'm staying with my sister now. We have never had an argument this big. Marie Ho edit. The reason Peter can't come to the wedding is because his girlfriend's family has a big gathering abroad every 5 years and is going to that. Seems like we are not his priority. We live in the UK, where you're legally obliged to pay child support. Brian doesn't owe Peter anything in that regard. I did an online calculator, and according to that, it was around £450 per month. I picked my wedding dates before Peter's girlfriend's family planned their holiday. Peter knew when the wedding would be, then his girlfriend invited him on holiday, and he literally cancelled on us. Getting married on your dead mother's birthday is insane. You're guaranteeing from the get-go that your anniversary will always be a memorial to your grief, instead of a celebration of you and your spouse. Love my husband, and I specifically set a date far away from his late father's birthday or the anniversary of his passing for this exact reason. This is weird and uncomfortable memorial concept, and yes, you're the hall for prioritizing dead family members over living ones, and nobody's mentioned it, but divorce is a thing, and if it happens, her mother's birthday will always be associated with a bitter event. You're the home OP. I lost my dad suddenly and unexpectedly. I've always hoped he would be there to walk me down the aisle if I ever do get married. There are so many ways of imagined to have a spirit in memory present on my wedding day, and none of those involved getting married on his birthday. My point is, you are fixating on one way to memorialize your mother and causing strain with your partner over a memorial that could happen so many different ways. You could incorporate your favorite flower into the arrangements. Choose your favorite color as one of the wedding colors. Wear or carry something of hers as a part of your outfit. Give a toast to her during the reception. All of the above by standing so firm on a date that is special to you alone. You are pushing your fiancé out of the wedding. This could be a hill that your relationship dies over. Move the date. Choose a different way to honor your mother on your wedding day that still allows the day to be about you and your fiancé. And with your mother's birthday free, you can plan a special birthday celebration for your mother that you and your family can make 100% about her. But think of the post without the context of the mother. Opie and fiancé agreed to a date, and that was the plan. The son agreed to attend and then cancelled to go to his girlfriend's event. If you already have a date set and agreed upon, then one guest makes other plans. You don't move the whole thing to accommodate that one guest unless the circumstances preventing that person were extremely important and unavoidable. I don't think op is the hall for not wanting to move things around based on the circumstances.